Okay, it's 5:33, so I think we'll go ahead and get started. Don't see anyone else sitting in the waiting room. Just wanted to welcome you to the Bucktail Boulevard Bikeway virtual meeting, which is the second in a series of University Neighborhood Safer Streets meeting as part of a kind of a broader planning and pieces of design project here. Thank you for taking your time with us today. Real quick, first here, I'm going to do a little bit of orientation. The last time we spoke with you all as part of this project was with a different platform with Teams. So most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with Zoom, but just in case, and I do see we have a few people on the phone. So we're going to try and do our best to describe, each slide as we're looking at it. But on the Zoom bar here, we are starting with everybody's mics off, but this meeting is set up as an interactive meeting rather than a webinar. So you will certainly have your time to ask questions and even possibly, unmute yourself and speak. So never fear, you'll have your time. Your mic is off. When you do need to unmic, this picture here shows you where to do that. You can have camera on or off. If you're having bandwidth issues, I'd recommend keeping your camera off. That can help a little bit, as well as the chat function. We're going to do a little bit different approach than we've done in the past. We're going to actually have breakout sessions so that we can have more open small group discussion. And I'll give a little more background on that in a second. But during the main session, while we're talking through some background and things like that, you may absolutely put questions in the chat box, and we'll either answer them right now, if it makes sense, or hold them for those breakout sessions. So feel free to put them in the chat box or, raise your hand with the Zoom raise your hand function. So that's kind of the orientation. This meeting is being recorded, so we will have it up on the website within a few days afterwards, probably right at the beginning of next week. And we'll even have the breakout session recordings, assuming everything goes well. So you can point your neighbors to those that haven't seen this, weren't able to make it tonight. And then the last thing is just, let's be polite to each other, be respectful to other meeting participants and the Dottie team that we have here with us. Don't use obviously profanities or inappropriate language, and just recognize, you're here speaking with folks who everybody's trying to do the best they can to make this a better area, make this corridor great. So moving on, one last thing, folks calling in, we will give you a chance to unmute. We'll call you by your last 4 digits of your phone number. So I know you don't have an easy way to raise your hand or put something in the chat, but we won't forget about you. So moving on with a quick overview, the main reason we're here today is so that we can keep you both informed about this project, and also so that you can give us your thoughts and let us know what we missed on the design as it stands right now. You'll find out that with this project, there are still a few things that are being figured out with stakeholders in the area and with some engineering pieces that are still happening. So give us your feedback. That's why we're here. We want to make sure you know what's going on and hear what you have to say. We'll do quick 10 minutes intro background on the project, and then 5 minutes of University Neighborhood Safer Streets update. And that's going to be the bigger picture, kind of beyond just the Bucktail Bikeway piece that we're talking about. And then we're going to get into the Bucktail piece, kind of the meat of it, with an overview, proposed design, and schedule. And then we'll have that Q&A session breakout that I'm talking about. I'm going to try and allot 15 to 20 minutes to that. We could probably spend 2 hours. So we'll try and go through quickly and keep your questions short, and if you can, but we certainly want to answer them as much as we can. And then we have the last 10 minutes set up for reporting back to the group. That's the recap, what was discussed during those breakout sessions, and then also next steps for the project, what you might see going forward. This is the breakout room selection piece. One of my teammates will put these 1, 2, and 3 selection options for breakout rooms in the chat box. But right now, the goal is to get everybody to select either breakout room 1, breakout room 2, or breakout room 3. so that we can start to get you sorted before we get to the breakout session in about 35 or 40 minutes. Breakout room 1, if you live or work in segment 1, which is Corona Street to High Street, between Corona and High, so that's the western section of this full section that we're looking at. If you live or work in that section, then you would be in breakout room 1. If you live or work in segment 2, which is High Street to University, the eastern segment, you would be in breakout room 2. And 3 is those who have an interest in the corridor, but who don't live or work, right along here. So if you can put your selection, just paste it in the chat box, we will get you sorted. And when we get to this stage again in 35 or 40 minutes, I'll go through and ask everybody who's on the phone which one they want to be assigned to. So with that really quickly, I just want to go through your city team who is working on this. I'm going to be the moderator, present a piece of this, and I'm actually a consultant working for the city trying to coordinate some of this public outreach. Ellen is the planning lead, and she's not able to be with us today, but she's the face that you'll see on a lot of this moving forward as well. So we'll try and represent her well. Ashley is the community designer, and she'll be doing a good chunk of the presentation. She's got a lot of the planning background with the city. And Afor is also community engagement. She'll be moderating one of the breakout rooms. Lisa is the project manager. So she's the one that actually gets to get this stuff in the ground. Big job. And then Michael Coslow is the project engineer. So he's the kind of engineering and technical review brains behind the effort. So with that, I am going to hand it off to Ashley to talk about background for this project.
Sure. Thanks, Alicia, and thanks all for joining us. I'll be filling in for Ellen this evening. As Alicia said, we're trying to kind of condense some slides here to save some time. And so we do have a whole bunch of background on this that we'd be happy to share, and that was captured in our previous meeting. But we've condensed it just to a few slides for this evening. And so one of the things that, where does this type of project come from? First of all, we don't have a slide on Vision Zero. That is for sure one of the #1 drivers for what we do within Dottie, which is our goal of reaching 0 traffic fatalities or serious injuries on Denver roads by 2030. But another important thing that Dottie is really focused on is moving people. It's no secret Denver continues to grow, our population continues to boom, but the one thing that isn't growing is the space we have within our public right-of-way. And so we're thinking very hard about what can we be putting in the ground that is moving more people in that same constrained space. So that graphic on the presentation you see just shows just how you can move the same amount of people in a different amount of space in the public right-of-way, whether it's folks in single occupancy vehicles, folks in a bus, or folks on their bikes. And so Denver is focused on creating more choice, because it has been demonstrated that with more choice, with more safe and efficient multimodal networks, we can start to get towards what we call mode shift, where folks are getting out of their vehicles and starting to feel more comfortable using transit, walking, biking, et cetera. And so that's one of the big drivers for why we're doing these kinds of projects around the city, including the one we're talking about today. This is just a snapshot of how some projects get built through Dottie. There's even more there's even more ways that we build projects, but just want to highlight that, one of the main ways we are able to implement a lot of our bike projects is through our paving program. Our paving program is a huge driver for the work that we do at the city. We have to pave some roads at least every 5 years, if not more. So that is something that's constantly going through the city. So we're working hard to really align a lot of our projects so that they are coming in at the right time as it relates to paving. So we're not tearing up freshly new, asphalt, et cetera. And with bike lanes in particular, we're able to install a lot of bike lanes very efficiently and effectively by following our paving program. So when our paving program moves through an area, and if it's already been identified for a bike project, we work really hard to try to catch up and make sure we have a design in place. So when our crews put those pavement markings back down, they can put in these new bike lanes. We also have signal programs that help with all of those other signal needs and updates and new signals. I'm going to come back to Bond in a moment. We have a pretty new sidewalk gap program where we're actually building new sidewalks throughout the city. We'll talk a tiny bit about that. We have maintenance projects and programs where we're out there, and that's where things like refreshments to crosswalks, et cetera, go. And And it really should probably say maintenance and operations, because what happens is your 311 calls, your concerns, those usually will get sent to our area engineers who will listen to those, evaluate and assess those, and where appropriate, we can have our own crews get out there and install new pavement markings, new traffic treatments, etc. And then we do have a bike program because we have a very ambitious bike goal for the city, 125 bike miles. And with that, we have, both our paving projects and our bond projects, but we also have a bike program that's really pushing our bike program projects out the door. And then finally, bond projects. So a lot of projects, that we can do with city, like annual budgets, are typically on a smaller scale. So when we want those big projects to happen and to go through, those usually get wrapped up within what we call our bond projects. So those are projects that are part of a larger package that go to you all, to the residents of Denver, to vote on. And that's how we get those major infrastructure improvements, which we'll talk about some of those in a second. And so this project we're talking about today, the Bucktail Bike Lane or Bikeway, is part of what we're calling the University Neighborhood Safer Streets package of projects. So in addition to the bike project we're talking about today, within this year, we will have all the projects identified on this map, either in design or construction. And they're all aimed at making the streets around this area safer for all users, and again, strengthening that multimodal network. So we've got the bike project, we have our bond project. We'll finally kick off the design and the outreach for that. That'll include making Bucktail between University and Colorado a complete street, while also looking for major improvements and rebuilds at the intersections of University Bucktail, University Evans, Colorado Bucktail, Colorado Evans. And then because of the signal program, we are able to also make some updates to the Bucktail Steel intersection, which has been identified in need of replacement. We will also be out there building sidewalks this year. Some of you may have already received, if you have a sidewalk gap being filled in front of your home, you should have received notification by now. We will be building those this summer. Those are those solid lines. And then we have another signal going in, a new signal at Evans and Ash, and we will be starting design for the Birch Street Neighborhood Bikeway. So these things are all things we are working to coordinate, and we've grouped them together because they all have a very common purpose, and we want to make sure that they're as coordinated as possible. And with that, let's focus really the remainder of our time today. And just so if I didn't make that clear, we will be coming back to you. You will be hearing my voice, better or worse, more this year. And it'll be about that University Neighborhood Safer Street, kind of that larger project as that starts to get rolling. So Bucktail Boulevard. So this, as I talked about before, we have our paving program. That's how this project has come to be, is we are paving Bucktail this year. And so we are working fast and furious to get this project designed so that by the time our paving crews get in there, we can have this design ready, and we will put this new bike facility in place as they are wrapping up their work. And so that's how we are able to fund this project specifically and so quickly. We understand via your feedback that there are visions for much bigger projects here, and we definitely have been capturing those. And that's not to say that those can't happen in the future. That's just not the funding and the mechanisms we have available today, which is why we're focusing on this scale that we have today. But we're excited that we can get such a high comfort bike facility with what we have available to us today. How did we get here? This Bucktail Boulevard was identified way back beginning with Denver Moves Bikes 2011. It was included again in our 2015 update. It was then emphasized in the 2018 very large Denver Right planning effort that was citywide. And now, as I mentioned, we finally are able to get this project moving because we have this paving coordination opportunity. And this is the study area that we're talking about. We have Bucktail we'll be designing a bike facility from Corona/Florida all the way down to University. And the reason, so there's a number of benefits to this project. In addition to a wonderful bike facility, we will be looking at lower stress crossings for folks getting across Bucktail, specifically at Franklin and High. We do see through these kinds of neighborhood these bike facility projects that by some of these treatments we put in the roadway, it will hopefully improve some safety along the roadway. Usually tends to slow vehicular traffic. It helps fill a gap in our network that we are working to build out. And then those purple circles on there, they kind of show where we connect to either our existing and or our proposed bike projects. So we've got a bike on, bike facility on Bucktail East of University, we have Franklin going north, that's already in place. And then we're working to build out, Franklin South, Florida to the west, et cetera. So again, we're building out that bike network very quickly. And then we also have some pretty major destinations. We called out primarily the park and the RTD stops, but clearly one of the biggest destinations here is DU. So that, I guess we assume, kind of goes without saying. That is a pretty huge destination here that is important to this project. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Kozlow now to talk about our existing conditions.
Thanks, Ashley. Yeah, as we start to get into the design here, we start to look at some of the characteristics of the road, right, from a technical perspective a little bit. What is the width of the road? What are kind of the speeds that cars are driving on it? How many cars are driving on it? And of course, safety driven, we start to look at what crashes are, and finally, what the parking characteristics are. And so these slides, if you can kind of imagine you were standing in the median here of Bucktail and could see through the tree, you would see on the bottom what our widths are here. We've got an existing bike lane from Downing to Franklin of 6 feet, the travel lanes that are 12 feet, and a nice 19-foot wide median. And so that's the initial Downing to Franklin. And then if we continue on to the next segment, as we go a little further east, we get closer to High Street. There is some very generous lanes, the 19-foot travel lane, 12-foot travel lane, 14-foot median, and 18-foot travel lane with no current bike facilities. And then as we go a little closer to University, that's where we introduce on-street parking. So 7 to 8 foot wide parking lanes in each direction, and 2 travel lanes in each direction that are 11 and 12 feet, and then the 22.5 foot median. So that's our existing conditions width-wise. And we look through the corridor. There were, we especially try to focus on crashes that involve our vulnerable road users, the bicycles and pedestrians that are on the corridor. You can see here we've had 6, unfortunately, between 20 and 13 pedestrian crashes, 2 bike crashes, and 139 vehicle crashes along the corridor. So when we think about what we're trying to do is reduce crashes, but also the severity of those crashes are a little more impactful for those vulnerable road users. So, and then in addition to the crash data, there's 2 kind of graphs here on this slide. On the left, you'll see what we call a level of bicycle stress. And so this kind of tells us, depending on how many cars are on the road and how fast they're going, can those bikes be on the same lane as a road? You might not imagine that on a corridor like this. They might need something that kind of looks like we're well into this category of needing a separation. Like by that, we mean a vertical element, like a flex post, a wheel stop, something that's in between the cars and the bikes traveling down Bucktail. So, and you can see kind of on the right is kind of informing that data that goes into the graph on the left. We have about 7,700 vehicles a day west of Franklin, and then when we get east of Franklin, it jumps up to 12,100. Those speeds are also critical to us, and when we talk about safety, because the severity of a crash is much more impactful for someone at a higher speed. So all that data was, we had 2 counts put down and collected that data in October 2019. And then last but not least, this is a little complicated in terms of parking, but this is the kind of summarizing the parking along the corridor along Bucktail, and you can see where a lot of locations where we don't have parking is more straightforward. We don't have parking, that's the yellow. Where we do, we're kind of showing 2 things, both what is the peak parking that we collected in 3 different situations, right? In our early weekday morning, if people were maybe overnight, a weekday midday, if there's students in class, and then a weekend midday. You can see there's those, kind of drivers, destinations that actually kind of alluded to, like DU. And what we're trying to show here is that there is parking restrictions as part of the corridor, and but on average, we're looking at not too terribly utilized parking along the corridor, although we understand and recognize there are peaks when there are events at the university. So that is, I believe, the technical data, and we also heard a lot from you. So I am going to kick it back to Ashley to talk about the data we've heard from you.
I'm going to cover that one, Michael. I also wanted to, no, that's fine. I also wanted to interrupt here and thank you to the 2 council districts that are represented here. Thank you for joining us today and there's also some major organizations such as DU participating. So they're here to give us their thoughts and hear your thoughts as well. So I'm going to first go through what feedback we heard from you all and how it's informed this project. We were able to get feedback from many different sources. We got feedback from one-on-one stakeholder meetings, the previous public meeting we had, online comment submissions, emails, a few emails of you I know are still outstanding responses to you. So don't think we forgot about you, but this is the quick summary of kind of a snapshot about a week ago when we just took that snapshot of what we had heard so far, combining all of those sources. The top ones are improving safety for all. This is out of over 150 comments so far, which is great. Improving safety for all, which can include things like concerns about speeding and many other categories there. Challenging intersections, which is not surprising along this corridor, something that the design team is certainly thinking about. Prioritizing bicycle safety, those folks who are really thinking this is a critical connection and we want to make sure it's given the weight it's needed, as well as other existing conditions. And we'll talk about that in just a second, and pedestrian safety. And then the rest of them were, a few comments that we've certainly heard and logged and considered, but are not as common as some of these other ones. So just anecdotally, some of the most commonly noted as I mentioned, vehicle speeding along the corridor, and then complaints about difficulties crossing busy intersections, particularly Franklin and Bucktail, certainly high we heard about as well. And then one of the ones that we have heard, particularly through a number of individual submissions, emails, thank you for passing those on to us, were concerns about excessive noise from I-25, and also this kind of the western segment of this, making sure that the city is still open to other design solutions maybe down the line. And I wanted to make sure that we included that in this comment summary because it is absolutely being routed through Dottie. But a number of those types of concerns are really able to be addressed through a longer term, a little bit more planning oriented process to get it into some sort of plan that can be backed up then by a bigger financial backing, if nothing else, because those are projects of bigger extent. So they've been heard and they are being discussed and routed through Dottie, but they are outside of the scope of this specific project, because this specific project, as Ashley mentioned, was able to be funded and constructed because of repaving that was already going to happen between the curb faces this year. So certainly not forgotten about at all. So a quick picture summary of those top topics that we are addressing as part of this project. Safety for all, vehicle speeds. We'll go through how we're addressing them. Intersections and crossings, a good example here with high. Prioritizing bicycle safety, certainly with existing facility bicycle lanes out there, and how can we make those better, and how can we put them new facilities in the gaps. And then coordination with university and RTD was something we heard obviously from stakeholders, because those are some of the stakeholders, and it's something that's been a really critical part of this project too, as you can imagine. Quick summary of how we addressed these, and then I'll go through a little bit more, give you some images of what these solutions might look like. Safety for all users, protected and buffered bike lanes inherently, they provide a physical space for people riding the bikes, and that inherently narrows the visual roadway. Basically, it visually narrows the roadway, which can absolutely help improve vehicle speeds. Intersection crossings, we're looking at potentially some enhanced, excuse me, potentially some enhanced crossing markings. That'll help a little bit, as well as, even putting in the bicycle facility can help reduce shorten crossing distances for pedestrians and move faster moving cars away from those pedestrians. So it's helpful on the bicycle users as well as the pedestrians. Prioritizing bicycle safety, obviously installing protected and buffered bike lanes is just prioritizing that to start with, but we're certainly considering making sure that stays in the project, or that stays a focus of the project, I should say. And then coordination with DU and RTD. The project team has been diligently, especially even more intensely recently, been having discussions with those outside organizations and agencies right now. Conversations with stakeholders like that are really important to know what focus we need and what impacts on some of those users it will have, as well as RTD and DU have done a lot of research on their roadways and their neighborhood. So they have good information to provide to Dottie as well. So this is going to be a number of slides on the proposed facilities. When I say proposed facilities, this is what's currently in the design, but we're here to find out from you if there's a challenge with some of these or something we forgot about or haven't addressed. So it's certainly not final, but this is what's as it currently stands. So please give us your feedback. The proposed cross section between Downing and Franklin, you can see the little key plan in the upper right corner if you're confused of where we are. So Downing to Franklin is shown as basically installing a buffer. We know that there's, sections of this has a bike lane already. So the travel lane is actually narrowed down to 11 feet, which is not all that narrow. That's about standard for a bike lane, or sorry, for a travel lane in the city and county of Denver. And an example photo of what a buffered bike lane might look like. In the background, you see parking. In this section, it would be more like what's in the foreground here, where the bike lane is right up against the curb. The section from Franklin to High Street, the proposed cross section adds protected bike lanes in one direction. In the westbound direction, the 2 travel lanes remain. They are narrowed down a little, which should help with some of the speeds. And then the bike lane is up against the curb, as in this picture, with some flexible posts, as shown in this picture as well. In the eastbound direction, it's really a buffered bike lane because of that tight space that's out there currently. And then in the easternmost section that we're talking about tonight goes up to University. This is the section from Heide University that fronts the university. And I have 2 examples of some potential options because neither of these has been selected. A lot of it has to do with really ongoing analysis and discussions with stakeholders and your input and everything. So the option A that's shown on the top is removing a travel lane. If you remember, the existing cross section in this section includes 2 travel lanes eastbound, 2 travel lanes westbound, and then parking. So we can't fit 2 travel lanes, parking, and a protected bike lane all without doing significant curb work, behind the curb work. As part of this project, we can do it between the curbs. So what we're showing here on the top option is moving the parking away from the curb and putting the bike lane as a protected bike lane. So from the curb, it goes bike lane, buffer with posts, parking, and then 1 travel lane. The second option, option B here, flips that and it says, okay, we're going to keep 2 travel lanes, but we're going to remove the parking. And so this one basically takes that 8 feet of parking that you're used to seeing there and converts that into a bike lane so that bikes can safely get through this corridor. And that bike lane would have a buffer with vertical post protection. Again, those are the 2 options that are currently being considered, and neither one has been finalized yet. Some plan view or aerial view top-down looks at a few of these options in some intersections. This one's Bucktale and Downing, and you can see a bunch of we call them call-outs, the little labels here, that talk about different things that are going to help enhance the safety and comfort at this intersection. And preservation of on-street parking for a small piece of it, curb extensions. Those 2 corners are pretty uncomfortable when you're standing as a pedestrian because of how somebody in a car may be able to cut the corner a little faster. And so these curb extensions will be, paint and post on the ground. Curbside lane repurposed to protected bike lane facility in this little section down on the southeast corner. Green conflict markings, and then shared bike lane and right turn lane for vehicles. You'll see another example of a type of shared bike lane on the next slide, but this one shows one option that's actually already in place in downtown Denver, where room is tight, where and the right turning vehicles and the bicycles share that bike lane, but the right turning vehicles are the ones who have to yield to the bicycles in that bike lane. So I said you'd see another example of a bike lane interaction with the right turn lane. This picture shows the other option that might be possible depending on how those the spacing and the geometrics lay out. So the other example, this is Bucktale and Downing again, but zoomed out a little bit. And I wanted you to see the intersection stuff before we look at the bigger picture here. This is Florida Avenue, which is basically our connection point on the west end. The reason this says extent of bike facility is because the bike facility ultimately connects to Florida Avenue. So it doesn't just dead end. It's going to connect to Florida Avenue and other, appropriate bike facilities there. But in order to get that bike facility in, this kind of the project extents reach out starting towards Ogden, where the travel lane changes happen. So again, connection to the Florida Neighborhood Bikeway, preservation of on-street parking in this little section here. And we already talked through these other pieces. One of the things I wanted to point out here was this green conflict markings transition description. If you haven't seen them other places, this is where there's a transition before the intersection and a right turner may be crossing the bike lane. We put these green conflict markings in. Bucktail and Franklin is another challenging one. Looking at narrowing the lanes to allow the bicycle facility through here, obviously connecting to the Franklin bike lane to the north and neighborhood bikeway proposed to the south. And then one interesting thing besides those conflict markings we already talked about, one interesting thing that might go in here is this two-stage turn box. And it's really hard to take a picture in real life of a two-stage turn box. But right here, you'll see one that's downtown Denver right now. It's this green thing right here. This person on a bicycle who's crossing, if they wanted to turn left without turning in front of traffic, they can pull over into this green box and wait until the other road gets a green light. And so there will be a few of these to help facilitate the left turns off of Bucktail onto Franklin. Bucktalda High Street, primarily looking at green conflict markings there, as well as obviously installing, excuse me, the bicycle facility we've already been talking about. And those green conflict markings are now through the intersection in this case. That's a pretty heavy, we know there's RTD movement through there, people in and out of that parking facility will help make people aware of that you're crossing a bicycle facility. You may have a potential interaction with somebody on a bicycle. And it kind of goes along too with those colored crosswalks too. Pedestrians have one, now bikes would have one as well. So with that, that's a quick summary of the proposed, concept or the proposed bicycle facility ideas through here. I want to talk about the project timeline before we get to the breakout session. And then I'm going to pause right after the timeline just to make sure there aren't any main questions we need to answer before going into the breakout session. But for now, on the timeline, Ashley already covered how this project kind of came about in the planning phase through the Denver Moves Bikes and the update to that plan, as well as Blueprint Denver. We came and spoke to you earlier this spring and gave you kind of more of the background on it. Now we've shown a little bit of most of the design pieces. And here we are in May, late May actually, at the design intent meeting is what we call the meeting when we give you as much design info as we have. Early summer, we're looking for the project team to finish up the design. And then right now we're looking at the late summer install of the project. That is still really being coordinated. I want to make sure that, we'll talk to you a little bit more about what our next contact with you will be. But right now that late summer install of the project is something that's not defined as the specific time yet. We just know it's on the paving schedule for late summer. So. Okay, so before I get to breakout rooms, teams, can one of you all unmute? Can one of you all unmute and let me know if there is let's see, I do see one clarification about option B would have a buffer and posts to provide more protection. And maybe we didn't have that up there, but so yeah, we are looking at providing posts everywhere we can to make sure we give as much protection as we can, particularly with this implementation too. So, okay, and then one last question was, will public comment be taken today? Absolutely, it's being recorded. I have it already, we already have it recorded in a document here, as well as we'll be taking those notes down during the breakout rooms and hearing your comments. So one last coordination piece here on the breakout rooms before we can get about 15 to 20 minutes in there. Again, if you haven't selected a breakout room 1, you live or work in segment 1, which is Corona Street to High Street. Breakout room 2 is you live or work in 2, High Street to University. And 3 is you live or, oh, let's see, we might not have room 3 is what I'm hearing. Looks like we're mostly rooms 1 and 2.
Yeah, maybe Caroline can confirm, but I don't think I see anybody signing up for room 3. So
we have one person signed up for room 3.
Cool. Well, we're happy to have a chat. And if the questions get answered quickly, whoever's in breakout room 3 can be popped into a different one as well. So for now, let's go ahead and Caroline, can you confirm if we've got everybody assigned here?
We do not yet. Give me just a moment. This takes a second here.
And so as a reminder, we'll all be coming back after those breakout rooms, and we can share any of those kind of high level questions that popped up that, you know, the larger group may be interested in. So this isn't the end. The breakout groups will come back to this big group.
Yes, and please stick around too, because we have 1 or 2 more key pieces of info at the end. So.
Okay, I think I have everyone who chatted, but I think there might be a few folks who haven't chatted their preference. So we can go ahead and open the rooms and go from there if that works for you all.
And reminder to breakout room hosts to record your breakout rooms, please. All right, as folks hop back in here, I'm gonna see if I can get my screen to pop back up. And of course, now it's on a different slide somehow. Here we go. Can you all see my next step slide? Can I get a thumbs up? Okay. And then Caroline, can you make sure we are recording again here in case it stopped?
We are, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, somebody tell me, I lost my participants window. Somebody tell me if we're all back in the main room. There we are. Looks like it.
I think we're close.
Close. I think room 1 is back.
Still trickling in. Those room 1 stragglers.
No, I think we're back.
Oh, I thought you said is okay. Great. Well, we are at 6:30, so if you have about 3 more minutes, I apologize for taking time over here. We're going to do 4 more minutes because each room will do a 1-minute report back on what you heard, and then I will go over these next steps very quickly. So, room 1, can you do a 1-minute report here?
Sure. Yeah, we had two residents in Councilman Cashman in room 1. That's from Corona to High Street. And really the emphasis from room 1 was that, hey, while we're investing in the paving, there needs to be also a focus that gets the entire corridor in a study. And the entire corridor being defined, it looks like we think of it Downing to University, but perhaps just High to University being the critical part. So that was kind of what we heard from room 1, that, hey, this is a good project, but it isn't enough, that we need to take a look a little bit further, longer range look at Bucktail Corridor.
Yeah, Michael, the only thing I would add to that is it's actually, they would like more of an emphasis Corona all the way to High.
Yes.
Thank you, Liz.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, I was going to add that we do have a really wonderful study that looks at High to Colorado Station area. So it's good. Thank you for that clarification, Lisa.
Okay, and room 2? Great.
I guess that was us, Alicia. I think that we had folks from DU, from Council District 4, as well as residents, and we're able to chat about the importance of, making sure we're partnering with DU on this, and, that it's this group effort of DU, RTD, who owns, and operates the light rail station there, as well as the residents. And so there was some questions about, are we checking in with those folks? And the answer is yes. We also emphasized that, this is the near-term project we have, but there is this recognition of a much larger, longer-term need in the area for some of these big projects. Alicia, anything to add to that?
The only thing I'd add is that there were also questions about the specific types of treatments, because they're a little bit outside some folks' comfort zones. And Ashley pointed out that absolutely they are, but they are also standards throughout the country. So they are becoming more and more common. So we'll get more used to them quickly. Okay, room 3.
I can do that, I guess. So we had several residents, neighbors in the area who utilize this corridor a lot to get to and fro. And there's just a lot of, desire to see road diets in the area and on this corridor, and looking at DU as really this kind of hub nexus where you've got all the transit and all the bike paths that are through there, really encouraging pedestrian travel, pedestrian movement through there. So we're looking, we're really excited and wanting to do more of a road diet, I think, and even add more protection to Bucktail where possible, and even up and down Franklin. So just a lot of really good ideas and thoughts on how we can even increase safety along that corridor even more. So I think people are really excited about what we have coming and hopeful to see a little bit more in the future.
Great. Okay, thank you, those reporting back. Thank you, everybody, for participating in the breakout rooms. It seems to be a really good forum to get more discussion going rather than just chatting questions. So we appreciate you participating. Quick, 2 more slides. Next steps here. First, on the top right, ways to join our email list if you're not on it. If you didn't get notice of this email or of this meeting through email, you're probably not on it. So leave your email in the chat or visit the website listed below, and you can add the email there, add your email there. So 3 ways to connect with us. Visit the project website. For those on the phone, it's bit.ly/Denver Bike Paving, bit.ly/Denver Bike Paving. You can see project information there, see next steps, or sign up for, we may have a few more office hours. Contact us if you really have a one-on-one need and don't see some that work. Next time you'll hear from us is while we're working out the installation schedule. Tentative is late summer of 2021. So those of you who directly front the roadway, it's basically properties right along the roadway. We'll have construction flyers mailed to you in the weeks leading up to construction. So you'll be able to, it'll describe a little what's going in and a little bit of the timing. So you'll see those this summer. And then the last is to contact us, email bikes@denvergov.org, bikes@denvergov.org, and include Bucktail in the subject, because that does collect a number of different project emails. And we've also set up a project hotline, which is new for these projects. Call 303-223-6575. 303-223-6575. Leave your name, your comment, again, which corridor you're talking about, and also your contact info if you want us to contact you back. Quickly, a thank you for taking your time today and for the extra 5 minutes. I would give you each a piece of 5-minute candy here, but I can't do that virtually, unfortunately. Just to thank you for being here. And we've changed a little bit the way we do some of these public meetings, been working with council to make sure people get to speak up during these meetings. And so thanks to them for that. We also have implemented this survey, which I'll read in a second, this bit.ly link. That survey is about the meeting specifically, not necessarily about the design or the corridor. It's asking us how we can improve talking to you, giving you information and getting information. So that address is bit.ly/Bucktail Meeting Survey, bit.ly/Bucktail Meeting Survey, all lowercase. So again, recording and all the meeting summary will be up on the website and shortly, hopefully the beginning of next week. And otherwise, if I didn't miss anything, Ashley and team, we would like to thank you for your time and have a good rest of your evening.